Hel-
Hey, William.
Hello, Dad.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I've been reading about this guy, 21 Savage. Do you know who he is?
Yes. His name. So he was a rapper for Post Malone. Post Malone is a singer that sings songs, but he was picked up by ICE because he's an immigrant and he is not a U.S. citizen.
Huh. Well, I was thinking that we would talk today about what the removal process is that 21 Savage finds himself in. Okay?
Okay.
Now, I've never heard of 21 Savage prior to all this. Have you heard of him?
Yeah. I listened to some of his music.
Okay. Well, upon reading about his case, I think it's pretty similar to what a lot of people in the United States are going through who are not permanent residents or citizens. In fact, it's very similar to many of my clients' cases. Should we talk about it real briefly?
Sure. Why
Okay.
not?
Sounds good. So, what happened with 21 Savage is he did not have valid immigration status, although he entered the United States as a young child on a visa with his family. As I understand it, he has no criminal record, although he has been arrested on a drug charge. As I understand it, it was possession of marijuana, but he wasn't convicted. So looking at it, he's got about over 20 years here in the United States and no criminal convictions. He was picked up by ICE and put in detention. You know what detention is? It's kind of like jail. Okay. Now, everyone who is put into detention has an opportunity to go before an immigration judge and get a bond. Now, you've been in a bond hearing, haven't you?
Yeah. It's where you go up to a judge and they give you a bond. You have to pay this certain amount of money to get out of jail. Like it could be like $5,000, $7,000. It depends, but a rule is it has to be from your family. Your family has to raise it. It can't be from your lawyer or anything.
Right. The lawyer can't pay it.
The
So
lawyer.
essentially what it is in some cases, if you're put in removal proceedings, you can petition the immigration judge for a bond. Now, if you're eligible for a bond, you have to prove to the judge two things. Number one, that you're not a danger to the community. And number two, that you're not a flight risk. So what do they mean by danger to the community? In other words, that you haven't committed many serious crimes or any serious crimes for that matter. Now, there are some crimes in and of themselves that if you've committed them and you're convicted, then you cannot get a bond. Sometimes it's simple as something as minor as a misdemeanor possession of a controlled substance like a drug. You can't get a bond. There are some crimes that don't automatically prevent you from getting a bond, but they make it more difficult. Those are things like drinking and driving without a license. So a judge will look to see what the circumstances of the case are and whether or not you have made measures to make sure that doesn't happen again. So like, for example, if it's a drunk driving, whether or not you've gone to treatment so it doesn't happen again. The second thing you look at is whether or not the person is a flight risk. And by flight risk, you really look at two things. Number one is, what are their ties to the community? In other words, do they have family members here? Are they married? Do they have children? Are their parents here? Those are things that make it less likely that you would fail to show up to court. The second thing they look at is whether or not you have relief in immigration court. In other words, there's some type of benefit you can apply for. The most common things are called cancellation of removal or an adjustment of status. And we'll talk more specifically about those, and we'll do another video on those later. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Well, the issue with 21 Savage that I think is indicative and kind of shows the absurdity of our immigration laws is that you have someone who entered into the United States as a child, not on their own volition, whose family lives here in the United States, who's got no criminal convictions, and as I understand it, has two potential forms of relief. One is a crime victim, the other as what's known as cancellation of removal. So, been here a long time, didn't enter in on his own volition, came with his family, potential forms of relief. And in this case, the immigration judge gave him a $100,000 bond. I've never even heard of a judge giving an immigration bond of $100,000. But it goes to show the absurdity of our system, that you're going to require someone to post $100,000 who has no criminal record and has been here for 20 years and has family here. It seems absurd to me. Does it not you? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's 21 Savage, and that's the bond procedure. The next step is whether or not he's going to be able to show any type of relief in immigration court. And as that goes forward and as he applies for immigration relief, we'll analyze it. Will you come back and help me analyze it?
Yep.
All right.
So I have one question.
Sure.
Did he apply for DACA?
That's a very good question, because you would think that he normally would have. He was of that age. That's one of the things his lawyers have not addressed. That wasn't a planned question, but that's a very good question. And what is DACA? It's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And how would you describe it?
Well, it's basically kids 18 and under, where you get to stay in the United States because you're just a kid. Like, you can't, it's not fun going through the removal proceedings and like getting deported and...
Right. So what deferred action for childhood arrivals are is if you entered in prior to the age of 16, you've completed your high school, you've got your high school diploma, and you haven't committed any what's called disqualifying crimes. Then you get a 2-year status in the United States that can continue to be renewed. And we can talk about that in a later podcast as well, too. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Hey, probably time for bed, huh?
Maybe.
All right, thank you. Again, I'm attorney Mark Christopher, and thank you for watching.